The morning light crept across the flatlands with reluctance, as if unwilling to break the quiet that blanketed everything. Golden rays traced the weathered planks of an aging barn, illuminating specks of dust that floated through the air like restless spirits. Hidden beneath a pile of straw, a woman from the Apache nation lay trembling, each breath shallow and uncertain. Her journey had pushed her body beyond its limits. Weariness wrapped around her like a heavy cloak. Though only 22, she'd already learned the harsh price of truth-telling in a society that cherished silence. Just 3 days before, her community had banished her, not because she'd done something wrong, but because she dared to speak when staying quiet was expected. The words she'd spoken came from deep wounds, directed at a respected figure who had wronged her family. But no one had stood beside her. No one had taken her side. Her people had turned away, forcing her into the darkness with only a ragged blanket and the bitter taste of unheard truth. Watering the empty plains, isolation seeped into her very core like the coldest season. When the barn emerged before her, it felt like grace she hadn't earned. Sturdy timbers, fragrant straw, a roof promising protection. She dragged herself inside and welcomed the darkness. Sleep was meant to last until either starvation or peril woke her. What she hadn't anticipated was the sound of approaching feet. The rancher walked in as daybreak arrived. 29 years old, composed and tall, molded by silent heartbreaks he rarely acknowledged. His footfalls met the earth with unhurried intention. He'd come searching for a missing young cow, not a broken spirit buried in his hay. Spotting her froze him in place, not from alarm, but from recognizing another person's pain. She raised her head, eyes blazing with defiance despite her shaking frame. She steeled herself for angry shouts, violent handling, accusations she'd grown used to receiving. Instead, he lowered himself carefully, moving like the gentle dawn itself. When he spoke, his words were barely audible. "Gather whatever you have. You're coming with me." The statement hit her harder than any physical strike could have. She stared back, incapable of believing what she'd heard. Kindness had deceived her in the past. She understood cruelty. What she couldn't comprehend was genuine care. In a whisper, she told him there was nothing for her to gather. He gave a knowing nod, as though he'd expected that answer. His hand moved partway toward her, then rested against his own leg, an offer made without pressure. Her rise was unsteady and gradual. He maintained a courteous gap between them, as they stepped into the crisp morning air. She trailed behind at a safe distance, not from suspicion exactly, but from the careful wariness of someone who'd endured too much. The heavens spread out pale and boundless overhead, and for the first time in recent memory, she felt the weight of solitude lift just slightly beneath that enormous sky. A short distance from the barn sat his dwelling, its front porch wrapped in undisturbed calm. Opening the door, he moved aside. She lingered at the threshold, her fingertips grazing the doorframe as if confirming it was real. The interior carried scents of cedar wood and bread from the previous day. A lantern glowed in one corner, spreading soft amber light across the room. He directed her to a seat by the fireplace. Each gesture was measured and unhurried, as though he worried about startling her further. He filled a metal cup with heated water and placed food before her. Cornbread, beans, a modest portion of preserved meat. Her empty stomach clenched with need, a sensation she attempted to conceal. "Help yourself to whatever you'd like," he said quietly, turning his attention elsewhere so she wouldn't feel observed. She began cautiously, then ate with increasing urgency. Warmth began spreading through her body like hesitant optimism. Her gaze drifted to him. He remained at the window, hands resting loosely on the ledge, watching the wide-open country. A familiar loneliness seemed to drape over him like worn clothing. "What makes you willing to help me?" she asked. His response was a subtle lift of his shoulders. "No person should have to face the cold alone." The straightforward answer disturbed something locked tight within her chest. She'd braced herself for interrogation, mistrust, demands. What she discovered instead was someone who extended tenderness without strings attached. It both frightened and comforted her. He led her to a modest spare bedroom. The mattress appeared impossibly soft, impossibly secure. He lit a lamp in the corridor, mentioning softly that its glow might ease her if she woke during the night. She settled onto the bed with caution. Exhaustion pulled at her immediately. For the first time in countless years, she allowed herself to let go without terror. Beyond the walls, the night made promises she couldn't bring herself to trust. Within the house, the rancher stood motionless in the hallway, listening to the even cadence of her sleeping breath. It caught him off guard, how her presence felt less like an invasion and more like the first hint of something his solitary existence had been missing. When daybreak came again, her eyes opened gradually. An unfamiliar sensation of tranquility washed over her, foreign yet soothing. She couldn't say whether this place could truly be hers, or whether someone expelled from their home could ever claim belonging anywhere. But she understood with striking certainty that her entire path had changed direction the instant he'd uttered those impossible words in that barn. Yet, as she pushed herself upright, legs still weak from yesterday's endless walking, she felt the delicate nature of this fresh start. Whatever lay waiting in the coming hours, whether compassion, tension, or the gradual building of faith, she recognized that she was standing at the threshold of an existence she'd never pictured for herself. And recognizing this brought a quiet, wavering determination to confront whatever reality this unexpected refuge might hold. He discovered her position near the fence surrounding the animal pen well after the daylight had faded into twilight blue. The ground was releasing its warmth, the atmosphere growing sharper, and far along the horizon a tempest was forming like some enormous creature drawing breath in its slumber. She remained motionless as he drew near. A 25-year-old woman of Apache heritage, whose bearing showed strict self-control, though something about her posture suggested a burden she wouldn't name was forcing her forward. He halted several steps away, his boots creating soft sounds against the earth, taking care not to impose more than his mere presence already did. "You ought to head indoors before the weather turns," he said. His tone stayed level and moderate, gentle enough that it made no demands of her. She continued looking straight ahead. "Storms don't scare me." "I'm aware," he answered back. "But you're injured, whether you're willing to acknowledge it or not." She went rigid. The response was subtle, nearly imperceptible. But he caught it. He noticed everything, from the protective tension she wore like a shield to the sorrow that appeared in her eyes whenever she believed no one was looking. Her dignity wasn't fragile. It had been strengthened through years of losing far more than she'd ever gained. But even pride reaches its limits when fatigue works its way into the marrow. The breeze changed direction, sending dust swirling above them. The clouds massed together, dark and turbulent. She stood slowly, as if the simple act carried a price. "If you believe rescuing me entitles you to judge my resilience, you're wrong. I didn't rescue you," he replied. "I simply happened to be the person who got to you first." She finally turned to face him. Her eyes, keen, evaluating, taught by necessity to question gentleness, settled on his features. He was a man of few words, 30 years of age, carrying the composed air of someone who'd spent considerable time in quietness. He didn't encroach on her space. He didn't attempt to control her. He simply remained still, which was something rarely offered to her by men. Stillness without expectation attached. "You give yourself too little blame," she said, though the statement held less fire than she'd planned. "Most men claim responsibility for what chance has already determined." He gave a slight shrug. "Then I won't claim any." A flash of bewilderment passed across her expression, as if she were uncertain whether he was ridiculing her or being sincere. She examined him once more, this time more deliberately. Her breathing relaxed somewhat, though she disguised it swiftly. The wind picked up again, colder this time, making the gate rattle. The horses grew restless. A far-off rumble rolled across the plains. He glanced toward the barn structure. "The weather's closer than it appears. Yet here you stand," she observed. "So do you." They existed in a brief, tense hush, hanging between them like a narrow ridge neither had yet decided to traverse. She looked away first, though not in rejection. In confusion, he took a step backward. "I'll leave you be. But get inside before the electrical discharge begins." As he turned to go, her voice held him there. Not cutting this time, but uneven at the edges, warned by something she preferred not to reveal. "Why haven't you questioned me?" she said. He paused. "About what?" "Why I attempted to steal your horse that evening." He turned back toward her, though his face remained neutral. "When you're prepared to tell me, you will." She blinked, caught off guard. "You have no interest in knowing?" "Naturally I'm interested," he said. "But interest matters less than someone's readiness to speak." The response unsettled her in ways hostility never had. Direct confrontation was something she knew how to navigate. Compassion was foreign territory. Lightning flickered through the cloud formations, like fire running through veins. She inhaled deeply. "My people scattered. Not from outside threats, but from starvation and illness. My younger sister fled ahead of me. I believe that if I could catch up to her more quickly, if I had transportation, perhaps she wouldn't perish alone in the darkness." Her jaw tightened. "That's the reason." He didn't respond right away. The silence wasn't condemning or oppressive. It was understanding. "I'm sorry," he finally said. The plainness of it affected her more deeply than sympathy would have. She turned away again, but this time not to mask anger. Thunder cracked low and deep. A brilliant flash split the sky open. He checked the heavens once more. We should get inside immediately. She nodded once, with visible reluctance, but moved with him toward the barn. By then, the wind had grown fierce, pushing hard across the exposed terrain. They made it through the barn entrance just as the first wave of frigid rain poured down. Within, the shadows held the smell of straw, worn leather, and the faint metallic scent that storms carry. The structure shook with each powerful gust. The horses snorted nervously, their hooves scraping across the floor. He inspected the fastenings. This roof will hold, but the wind means business. Keep to the middle. She positioned herself by the stalls, arms crossed. You're not frightened? He shook his head. Being afraid doesn't help anything here. She observed him as thunder exploded overhead. His steady demeanor wasn't false courage. It was earned wisdom shaped by isolation and endurance, the very same forces that had shaped her. But in him, these forces manifested differently. He remained quiet not because he concealed things, but because he considered them carefully. The tempest grew more violent. Rain attacked the roof in relentless waves. Lightning revealed the barn's interior in brutal flashes. An unexpected surge of wind assaulted the doors, tearing one hinge partially free. She moved first, seizing the swinging door, her boots slipping on the wet floor. He was beside her instantly, throwing his weight against the wood. The storm howled, dragging at them like a conscious entity. Release it, he yelled. It could rip your arm clean off. She held tighter. If it breaks loose, the horses will panic and run. Their eyes met through the mayhem. Neither would give in. Working together, they forced the door closed, every muscle straining, and he managed to slam the latch home with one sharp, determined movement. They staggered backward, gasping for air. The barn trembled but remained intact. Gradually, the storm's fury transformed into a steady, rhythmic pounding around them. She let out a long breath, then spoke quietly. You weren't required to hold it alongside me. I wasn't about to let you shoulder that danger by yourself. She studied him, something changing beneath her protective gaze. Not trust, not yet, but the early outline of it forming. Beyond the walls, the tempest continued its assault, but inside something more solid had begun growing between them. Modest, yet impossible to ignore.